not abrupt stuff, but past 2 o'clock, so I'll start. You guys, first of all, thank you for coming out of some good snow to being here. Some of you guys might be a little tired after their day of ski, so you're like, hey, this is great. This is my first time at Alpine National Academy, so I am Greg Rhodes. I am on the cross-country national team. So luckily, Emily and I, teammate, we both got to come, so we're experiencing it for the first time. So we're learning what it's all about as we go through. Just quickly about me, I do have a PhD. I started ski instruction, snowboard instruction in Aspen in 2004. I moved from Midwest to Aspen to be a full-time ski bum, like many of you guys have done in your lives. At some point, I made the horrible decision to leave Aspen to go back to Minnesota to get a PhD. But I still, every winter break, every spring break, I went back to Aspen and taught. So throughout my PhD in kinesiology, I've really been focused on staying involved with ski instruction, and then eventually got on the national team, obviously, as a cross-country skier. So I'm bringing both my PhD life and my passion for exercise and human movement with ski instruction, and I'm kind of slowly figuring out how to bring that forward as we go through. So please, you guys, I have been a college professor. This feels very much like a college classroom, so please do not make it feel that way for me. Ask questions. If you fall asleep, don't worry about it. I'm used to it. If you have your iPhone out, I'm used to it. 18-year-olds do it all the time. So, but hopefully I'm not that boring, and hopefully I will get you guys up to moving for a second.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
What was your dissertation on?
My dissertation was on metabolic variability in novice marathon runners.
Okay.
We can get way deep in that if you want to.
I'm just curious. What year?
On the kinesiology side, I'm more on the physiology side.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to know.
There you go. So what this talk is, actually the last 2 years at Cross Country Academy. If you guys don't know, Cross Country Ski Academy, which you guys should all come to, is usually in West Yellowstone right after Thanksgiving. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday after Thanksgiving, West Yellowstone, cross-country skiing, anybody, you guys are all welcome to come there. So cross-country skiers, by this time of year, most of us are done. So we tried it here, but in the past it doesn't work out. So if you guys want to come. This talk I'm giving right now is kind of a hodgepodge of what I've talked about the last 2 years at National Academy for Cross-Country Skiers, and kind of bringing it to everybody. So functional movement and injury prevention, and I'll talk about some stability and balance at the end. So injuries in sport are going to come in kind of 2 approaches. We have acute injuries and chronic overuse injuries. And really, when I talk about this, when I talk about other sports and contact sports, I have pictures of hyperextended knees from rugby and head injuries from football. In alpine skiing, snowboarding, you think of these non-contact but acute injuries as your torn ACLs. And I think functional movement and functional awareness and stability truly is going to help us prevent those. When I talk about this in the form of acute injuries and contact sports, functional movement and stability is not going to make a difference if somebody takes their shoulder and puts it right into your knee and hyperextends it. In a rugby player, you're not going to have anything to prevent that. But we actually, as skiers, we actually can do a lot of body work and awareness that will help us prevent some of those horrible knee injuries that we might have. Also, even if you never have to deal with an ACL injury or a meniscus tear or anything like that, we basically do a repetitive sport all the time. So if it's skiing turns every day, if it's skiing bumps every day, if it's cross-country skiers moving through the world every day, if it's a snowboarder jumping off jumps, that's going to end up with chronic repetitive micro tears that also need to have some strength and stability to prevent. So by doing a little work on your own away from the hill, and especially over the summer, which I'll talk about, you can kind of start preparing yourself as you get ready for next winter even already. And yes, some of us, I can see, have more gray hairs than others. You probably are realizing that you need to do a little bit more work sooner than later. And you can still do it. I don't care what. My 78-year-old mom, I'm still having her do some stuff and getting her activated into these things to take care of it. So there's no age limit on it. And I'm going to quickly, sorry, editing my slides really quick, and I'm just gonna. All right, we're back. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So when we're thinking about injury, there's ways we can think about predicting it, and kind of predictors and possible injuries of what we're kind of doing when we think of those acute injuries as well as chronic injuries that we're talking about. So one, we want to have key fundamental movement patterns are always happening. So a lot of times the ski instructors, snowboard instructors, we're talking about those movement patterns that we want to have for effective turns, effective pressure management along the length of ski, whatever we're looking at. But I'm going to talk about it from a matter of, can I effectively and fundamentally move my body in a healthy pattern, just standing here on the ground, that can translate to healthy ski movements. Okay? We also always want to be efficient and effective in our movement patterns. Is always going to be essential to prevent away from injuries. We're also going to be looking for, if we have any moment, there's evaluations we're going to talk about away. Do we evaluate movement patterns that you might have heard about? But this is going to give us some kind of indications of poor fundamental movements or red flags of where your injuries might be at. We'll talk about what one tool that some PTs or some personal trainers will use for that. And then again, we can use that tool to predict and possibly prevent some injuries coming in the future. So this is what we're going to talk about with fundamental movements and functional movements. So we have kind of a model in American sports performance where, and I would even say some of us, maybe the younger people at PSIA, have a little bit of a slip on our performance model, where we're always looking at performance and then maybe some skills and then movement quality. The one thing I love about PSIA and the instruction part that's different than when I talk with football coaches and hockey coaches and baseball coaches, they're all about performance, and then sometimes they get down to the movement quality. Sometimes we stand around on the ski hill and don't move very much because we're talking about the movement quality too much. So we kind of have the actual performance model that we want people to have and movement qualities. We want to have good quality movement, and I'm going to say, how many of us take care of our good quality movement off the snow before we start getting on the snow and just talking about how good our turns are? So this is kind of the thesis of this, is try to make sure we're taking care of our quality movement every day, so then we can have better skills on the hill, and then we can have better performance on the hill. So flip that on model from performance on the hill to bad movement quality on the ground, and make sure we have good movement quality on the ground before we actually get on the snow. So functional movement screening, anybody heard of FMS before? Anybody had it done at a PT or anything like that? Okay. So it is just one tool that is out there. The PT expert that has created this movement screen, marketed as a functional movement screen. I know personal trainers, I know strength and conditioning coaches, and I know PTs all have, some of them bought into FMS, some of them have created their own. So this is just one that I'm highlighting because everybody's going to have some kind of screening there. But usually, we're going to rate the quality of your movement, not like a pass-fail or a score on our exams, but similar to that, just saying, do you have good quality movement, or you have good quality mobility, stability, and movement patterns that we can make sure that you aren't having any compensation movement patterns that are going to lead to negative outcomes. Okay? By the screenings that anybody puts out there, they're going to target some weakness areas, have you do some corrective exercises. I'll talk about a few corrective exercises by the end here. We can also enhance the quality of your movements. Again, those high quality movements on the ground. It's going to be better on the snow when we get back there next year. And hopefully, we can also decrease energy leaks, and that's kind of a performance model, but it doesn't matter even if it's skiing a green run or skiing a double black diamond, you make sure you want to always have all your energy that you're putting out into your skis into your effective movement. So the functional movement screening, I'm not going to go through all of them and how they link back, but it's this specific one is 7 exercises that they do. These are them. They're deep squat, hurdle lunge, inline lunge, shoulder mobility, a stability push-up, which is actually not testing if can you do a push-up or not. It's actually testing your core activation, alternative leg raise, and then the hardest one is usually the rotary stability. So out of these 7 exercises, there's 2 that are looking at your mobility, so how flexible you are. The shoulder mobility is probably the least important for us skiers. The alternative leg raise is actually a hip mobility one, which is probably really important as a skier, and also a posterior chain hamstring mobility. And then I personally, the reason why I put it in the middle, I don't think this has a laser pointer, is the rotary stability one, which is allowing us to know if we have the motor linkage from our brain to our core to make sure that we can fire in a way that we want it to be stable. Okay, so anytime we have upper lower body separation, we really do want to make sure we also have that ability to fire. And to do this one, this is not good because it's the reverse. The rotary stability is not a opposite arm, opposite leg. It's actually same arm, same leg, without having any tipping and falling. So in your hotel room tonight, we don't have a great room to have everybody do right now. You can get on all fours, try to lift left arm, left leg, right arm, right leg, and see how much you can actually fire that. That is one thing that over the summer, it takes usually about 2 or 3 weeks of practice, and most people can get to it. But it's one of those really things of just, can I consciously think in the cognitive stage, fire my muscles, and balance into that position. Okay. You start thinking about when we have those movement patterns on our skis and our snowboards, how did that, just turning on that simple thing that you can do every morning to make sure you do that connection. A lot of this deep squat, hurdle lunge, inline lunge, those are going to be, yes, about core stability, but also effective movement patterns in your knees and your ankles, as well as your hips, which should be limited. And so on this, we score them out as a 3, 2, or a 1. Excuse me, or a 0 if you have pain. And that's not if you're like, if you're a 1 doesn't mean you're a horrible person. It just gives us an idea of where there might be a weak link. And generally, most people fall into that 2 range, 2 to 3 range. 3 is quote perfect. But it's not a, you can move through them really easily. With a little bit of practice and a little bit of awareness, and a little bit of extra work can be there. I will say that a lot of research that comes from FMS screening, so if you think about it, a 3 on everything, you got 7 scores, 7 things to get scored. There is a correlation, not a causation, but a correlation with people who score, and this is not skiers, this is coming from football, basketball, and soccer specifically. People who score below a 14, when you just add up the scores on all these, have a higher risk of injury in that season. Okay, so this is high school, college athletes that go through this. So start thinking through that over the summer. If you start working on some of this, or you find a PT or a personal trainer who can run through this, or you might be like, hey, I heard about this FMS, what do you guys use for similar? Can I make sure I have that hip mobility, that ankle mobility, that core stabilization, so I can prevent my injuries coming next year? So I'm not diving too much further deeper into FMS. If you have more questions, I'm more than happy to talk about them afterwards. But I also encourage you, if you go to the FMS webpage, you can find a person who's certified in that screening, or I would just contact your favorite PT and see what they use. So when we talk about movement patterns, what are kind of the key points? Again, anytime we have an inefficient movement pattern can lead to a compensation, meaning I'm going to fire something else instead of what I actually functionally want to do, which could lead to some kind of joint imbalance or ineffective movement pattern. Which if I can't do that on the ground, how do I expect to do it on a really dynamic slope when I'm sliding? The body will always sacrifice quality over quantity. So that means the more repetition of our movement, you will quickly sacrifice the quality of that movement pattern to make sure you can do it. So again, think of some of you guys are choosing to be in here after 2.5 days. You've had a high quality. You might be making a smart decision because your body is going to choose to keep doing that, but it's going to have to sacrifice of your quality of your movement, which might lead to an injury. So the more we can train the motor signaling patterns and the strengthening of the mobility, we're always going to have that ability to stay into that quality movement pattern longer. And then finally, any kind of you have this compensated movement is usually an unstable one. which might lead to some kind of fall as we go forward. So addressing movement patterns and addressing quality of movement is going to be one of those things that we really want to make sure of to help long-term longevity, make sure we're injury prevention. This is just kind of some of the general reasons why you would do move and screen. Just kind of more that get out there and do it, talk about it, kind of highlighted it all repeatedly before. But the biggest one is if you go get an evaluation or start thinking about this early on in your season or your off season, the biggest part is just screening it and finding where you're weak is not really the end all be all. You need to have some kind of systematic prescription of change that comes with it. So any good high quality practitioner will have some kind of prescription for change to help you address any of those movement patterns that need to be changed. And then reevaluating. So that's kind of what I talked about 2 years ago at Nordic Cross Country Academy. The value and the importance of functional movement to movement patterns. There's so many a breadth of it trying to cover from telemark to snowboarding cross country that I'm not getting any in depth on each of those 7, but we can easily talk about it at some other time. The next thing I talked about that links back to it was just kind of a offshoot of that talk was to think about balance and stability and how we can address that again on the dry ground that might relate back to something on the snow. Okay, so we are in a sport that is highly regarded and needed a lot of balance and stability. Some people will say we lose our balance, and I will say no, you just don't practice it enough. And the best way to practice your balance is to be out of balance. Okay, so we'll talk about what goes into balance and how we can train it. And start making it really simple as we go through it. So we like to think of balance on a scale. A lot of things in human movement, anything in the world is on a spectrum from static to dynamic, and we're going to talk about from simple and primary static movements to dynamic. And so if you think about it in life, just child development, I didn't get a baby lying on their back, but it could be a baby lying on their back, to crawling, increasing the stability, or having to do more balance to the point of being able to run. And I probably should have put on a skier up there, or maybe a figure skater. Or who here is an alpine skier who then goes to cross-country skiing, and you guys get, 105 underfoot, maybe 80 underfoot skis. What are we skiing on in cross-country? Teeny. No metal ledges, a little thicker than you. Balance and stability is a huge thing in cross-country skiing that we talk about all the time. So if you want to ski outside in the winter on snow and work on your balance, I'm going to invite you to come over and cross-country ski with us, because we will definitely challenge your balance. Actually, this slide also uses one other thing. In the functional movement screening and the thought and theory behind it, whenever they start having corrective exercises, they have you think along the lines of child development. So anytime you'll start seeing some of my examples in the next list of exercises that we go through, anytime you want to start working on something, you want to start on, and I'm actually going to talk about it, you're going to see it here, supine. Imagine a baby on their back. That's where you need to start on any of your exercises. And then you're going to progress to anything on your stomach. And then you're going to progress to anything standing up. Okay. So that's a quick summary. We'll get back to that. You'll see that repeated as we go through. So when I start thinking about balance and stability, and I'm going to kind of use those words interchangeably right now, because to be in balance, you have a high amount of stability. So if I want to keep working on my stability, we're going to talk about 3 different types of stability: primary stability, secondary stability, and dynamic stability. So primary stability is any time that you are really focusing on core activation, so that motor control, that motor learning of how can I signal to fire my muscles when I want them to fire in that moment. That rotary stability test of the functional movement screen. And some strength. Okay. So if you did not do very well on the rotary stability, so to get a 3, you have to do same same arm, same leg. Put them out, touch the knee, out, and be back. Nice and slow movement pattern. You get 3 attempts on each side. If you can't do it, then you get to do the opposite arm, opposite leg. On both, that scores a 2. And if you still can't do that, then you're going to score a 1. So if you go home and you can't do that, and you're like, okay, Greg said rotary stability, probably one of the most important things I need to worry about. First thing I'm going to tell you to do is I'm going to have you lie on your back, put your knees up in the air. I'm going to just have you do a simple dead bug. Can you actually fire, totally stable, lying on your back, can you fire having my left leg extend and my right arm go over my head? If you can't even get that, the opposite arm, opposite leg, you're just going to take some time to learn how to do that. Now you got some motor learning in there. And then, again, on the back, it might be a glute hamstring strength issue that might be involved in there, but you're going to do some hip bridging. Okay? You might even turn over and do the bird dog is an opposite arm, opposite leg stance. There's a little strength and a little bit more complicated control. Okay, it might also be in that stance when you're on all fours and you're in that position. The core is everything front and back, from my shoulders to my knees. So it might be some of that posterior chain stability. So we're going to do some Supermans or go back to those hip bridges. Okay, so anytime you want to just start, and this is why I say core strength, core movement patterns can anybody do. It's pretty easy, doesn't matter your age, or even if you have an ankle injury or a knee injury, you can start doing a lot of these things on the ground. You're going to get to more advanced than primary stability of a basic plank. Okay, so on that functional movement screening, I said rotary stability is the most important. That's going to be the motor control of our core. The stability push-up is not about doing your push-up. It's can I go from here to an upright position with my whole body moving up at one moment. Not my butt going up first, not my shoulders going up and then my butt. If that is happening and my core is not tight, so you need to strengthen your core with some kind of front plank. One thing you do not see here, there's no crunches. Okay? You don't need to flex and extend our back more than we already do. So, this is just getting that core to being tight. The core muscles are stabilizing muscles. They're not a resistance muscle. And if these are not turned on and they're not strong, anytime, and I have a picture coming up of a really good skier not firing their core and they're all over the place. How many of us are skiing down the hill and having this go wonky? How many times have you had a clinician or have you told your students to tighten the core to make sure you have a good lower body separation? Okay. So again, these are things that I have also taken to clients and said, hey, go home and do these on your own.
The picture on the bottom right,
Yep.
is that, what position did she start in?
So this is, that's just kind of showing some more progressions. So that would be, she started, I wish I had a stage, this position here,
Okay.
and then elbow to knee, back and forth, okay?
What were you saying about the whole body going up at once? That's
So in the functional movement screen, I'm going to jump back. It's not too many slides. This stability push-up, a lot of people tell me, well, I can't do push-ups, and I'm not worried about upper body strength. That push-up, if you guys need to stand up, is just my whole body come up with one movement.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so if you don't have that core strength, you'll see people push up their shoulders and then roll up their butt.
Okay.
Or they might push their butt up on their knees and then come up. Okay? And just to give you guys, men, to get a 3, your fingers need to be pointed at your forehead to come up. Women, to get a 3, thumbs are pointing at basically your chin. Push up. Because they're trying to address upper body strength when they do that. So you can see where her hands are. That would be a 3. These are all examples of 3s on that functional movement screen. So that, to me, for skiing, when we're talking about core and stability, the stability push-up and the rotary stability are my two go-to that I'm really looking at when I'm looking at skiers. I want to make sure those things are firing, most importantly. Okay? So these are kind of a list of exercises that I would start with. These are things that you can do every single day. Doesn't matter what time of the season. That bottom one, that's just getting you more, and it's going to come, you'll start seeing in secondary stability why that's kind of a progression as we go through. Other progressions you're going to see on primary stability. Again, primary stability, I'm just looking, can I fire my core in an appropriate movement pattern, and do I have strength? So again, this is where you're going to start getting to side planks. This is where you're going to get into, I repeated the picture of her doing the mountain climbers, or elbows to knees. Okay? Bridging, same thing, posterior chain. It's not all about anterior chain, it's posterior chain as well. You can make a lot of variations on hip bridge. That's like the most advanced one, a foot on a medicine ball, so you had a stability issue in there. You could just do a foot on the ground, lifting one leg up. Okay? You can do planks where you lift a foot up and down. You can do a plank where you're lifting a hand off the ground, or you can go to a plank, one hand off, one leg off. Okay? That doesn't mean everybody's going to get to that point. Okay? Honestly, if you can do these, most likely you get a 3. This is the, can I go to the next level? Okay. Like any progression there is in skiing, we have progressions and exercises as we go. So primary stability is a motor control and strength. Secondary stability is anytime you're standing up and you're vertical. And this is where we really do need to get to a point when we are skiing. I'm going to have everybody stand on up, because we are active, moving people. So let's move. Not a college lecture. Okay, so neutral spine. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about it and been told about good posture in their life when they were younger. So this is a very important thing. So neutral spine off to the left side of the screen. What I want you guys to do to find your neutral spine. Feet shoulder width apart. Okay, put your hands on your hips. Go ahead and let your hips roll back and forth. Anterior tilt them, posterior tilt them. Okay, so now I want you to bring that pelvis first into a neutral position. So it feels like, imagine your hips is a big, and we've all said this before on the hill, our hips are a big bowl of water, and we don't want to dump the water out forward or back. We want to hold that water in there. Okay, so once you're there, then you can grab and touch, a little kinesthetic awareness. Pull those ribs, that ab tight, pull those ribs down to those hips. Roll those shoulders back. Okay. And now, if it was a room of college kids, which I tell, now, not being on your cell phone, pull your chin back, put your neck in alignment. Okay. So again, this one is focusing on anterior and posterior tilt of the hips. But again, we also, if you're a desk jockey, which I guess a lot of us aren't because we're in the ski industry, don't have the shoulders rolled forward, but hips neutral, abs and core tight, shoulders roll back, head back. Do a nice straight line. Okay, shake it out. Do it again, find that spot. Okay, boom, rotate those hips, activate the core, shoulders back, neck in line. Boom. Okay. This is one of those things that you'll see me in the long grocery line. Am I standing like this on my phone? Am I bad posture? Oh wait, I need to do this. Boom. In alignment. Line up. You guys can go ahead and sit down if you want. You're at line up in your ski boots. This is a really good time to find that neutral spine and that alignment in your ski boots. This is something to teach your students. Okay, we already have ski boots that are nice, hard and rigid, throwing our ankles forward. It's a lot harder to all of a sudden to be conscious of that movement pattern. So start thinking about, if we do not have that core stability, that strength, that firing, we don't have that on solid ground, start thinking of all the things that we have. Like I said before, if I have a weakness in that weak link, red flag. If I can't do neutral spine, when I'm skiing, what quality is that going to turn into my ski turns? How effective can I have good counter rotation on my skis? If I'm a snowboarder, how effective can I be in that reference alignment? If I can't even hold that position off the snow. So this is in that secondary stability, because now we don't have that horizontal, we're now having to deal with heavy mass of our head and upper body around it. Is our core holding us in line and not just being there in awareness in the horizontal position. So this neutral spine thing, I think, is probably one of the most important things when we start being a vertical athlete. Okay, so that after we've made sure we have our motor control and our strength, then do we keep our spine in neutral alignment. If you're a strength and conditioning athlete, we talk about all the time, every time we do a deadlift, a squat, any kind of movement in the weight room. Okay, those are always important. Once we've kind of ingrained that and made sure it's common every single time we're standing around, now you can have progress on, can I keep that neutral spine, can I keep that neutral alignment, and can I lift my knee up to 90 degrees? Okay, functional movement screen has us do an inline lunge. All it's looking for is, can I do this, step over, I'm going to try to do it, so you can kind of step over, touch, and come back without having all of this go around. We added into a secondary stability into that movement pattern. So again, once you're here, something simple you can do at home. Can I lift up to 90 degrees? Can I march back and forth? How is that going to translate to being on your skis? Can I move my hips and my knees and still keep a neutral spine? Hip abduction, anything, a lot of times people do these to strengthen their glutes. I'm doing it so it's not like this, or you'll see people, images or videos of people putting the bands up on the chair and grabbing like this and doing it, okay? They have a weak core. They haven't addressed that quality of a primary movement pattern, and they're just trying to fix something down here without fixing the primary quality of that movement. The reason why I like giving this talk at the end of your ski season is you might be thinking of what your injuries or kind of niggles that have been through a ski season. You'd be like, what can I do this summer? Oh, it might take a couple months of just being able to do this. And so by the time August comes around, you're starting to do those hip adductions and not doing all this all over the place. Okay, so again, vertical or secondary stability, what are some other exercises? One of those goals to get to at the end of this summer before you get there and started thinking about it. Y balance, or sometimes we call it the compass rose, standing on one foot, keeping that neutral spine the whole time. Can I tap, how far out can I tap my toe? Forward, back, in Y direction. You can do it as a compass rose, all directions on the compass rose, 8 directions on the compass rose, usually is what I talk about. Okay, again, having that neutral spine. This image taken from a research study. This research study was talking about core stability. Can you hop on one foot, side to side, while keeping neutral alignment? This individual in this study does not have that core stability. Does not have that secondary stability to maintain as he's doing it. As you're progressing on, weighted carries, two-handed weighted carries. Again, functional movement screening got really popular when we were talking about functional training, and people are like, oh, what's functional training? Can I carry my groceries up to my couple flights of stairs? Okay, again, fits into that secondary stability. Can I carry 2 bags of groceries? Can I carry 2 bags of groceries in one hand? Can I carry that without doing this or this? A lot of us will start doing this counter movement as we're trying to carry something heavy. For stability, boom. Okay, now you start having some G-forces in a big GS churn. You don't have stability, what are you doing? You're doing this, leaning into it. And I remember when I was getting my certs, and then they were like, hey, do you know, do the trees go horizontal or vertical? Okay, for stability in that churn, where are you at? And then the cross-country skiers, for interski, we brought agility training to the snow, and we highlighted the learning connection model that we all have and how it highlights that. But really, agility is this secondary, the ultimate of the secondary stability. Agility is, can I accelerate and decelerate, can I change directions while keeping my core or my body in a neutral spine position. So this was taken 2 years ago at National Academy for Cross Country. We were doing that exact thing of working on some neutral spine and agility movements as cross country skiers.
When you show weighted carry, is there a limit to how much you can carry and still be neutral, or is that shouldn't be a consideration, or?
I would say the limit is when you start having to compensate, when the quality of the movement is gone. So some people, it's a 5-pound weight. You'll see really big, strong, heavy people with a kettlebell that's a 65, kilo kettlebell doing it.
So that's the key, when you lose that stability.
Stability? Yeah. So this is where having a personal trainer is really good. That's quality, that's watching you and say, hey, is your movement pattern off? Because if you're just going out there and doing this as your carry or this as your carry, you're not actually activating that, and I would say lighten the weight. Go back to step backwards in that progression. Until you get the quality.
When you're using 2 weights, is that cheating? Do they balance each other?
Yeah, it's part of the progression. So you start here, you still have to balance, you have to activate that core because you have the weight pulling either direction. So if you're slightly off, you're going to have to pull back to level it out, and you have the weight to kind of do that. But you're still activating that core. So that's why I have both of them there. The guy is doing 2 weights, and the woman is doing 1. Okay, so you're just seeing a progression in that.
So,
Oh, one question there, sorry.
Is there utility in going back to those like exercises on the floor,
Yes,
like periodically, or?
yes, I will address that at the end. Okay. At the very wrap up, I do a when and where. Good
so
question.
is there a duration for that weighted carry or a distance? I mean,
Usually, it's a lot of times it's limited by your space that you have.
okay.
But if you have an unlimited amount of space, most gyms don't have more than 20 yards in a straight line. But if you were going to, if you had an unlimited, if you had a nice big backyard of grass and you had weights right at the edge of the house, I would probably say no more than 20 or 30 yards. Okay, turn around. You can scale everything by either increasing the weight or increasing the duration. So that would be one way to progress that exercise. Okay. So secondary stability is kind of where we're at. What we can do over the summer and over the winter as well. Because when we get to dynamic stability is really what we are dealing with as skiers every single time we are on the hill, and snowboarders. We are dealing with, this is the ultimate, and if we go back to that pyramid that we had where it was flipped around and I had movement quality really big, that's the ideal that I want to see is movement quality, which is dry land movement quality, to then get to better skills, to get to better performance. We haven't taken care of all those things that I just talked about, and we just jump straight into this dynamic stability, and we're thinking we're going to get better at it by being conscious of my core when I'm making those turns, when I'm doing my short radius turns. And you haven't addressed all that other stuff beforehand or in the morning or any other time of the day, how successful do you think this is going to be? Okay, so this is Grant Bishop on the telemark team. How core activated do you think he is on the right? Okay, I had to give an example where he has good neutral spine and core activation because he normally skis like that. But start thinking about it through the bumps. I mean, these are where dynamic stability comes into play. Okay? And these are just kind of more thinking through what is dynamic stability in the sense of in all sports, is it stacked up? Is it stacked up on a nice high intensity car on a snowboard? I kind of ran out of time of grabbing more pictures, but you can start thinking of all of those. If you think back to the first slide of Alpine Racer I had, I actually had somebody crashing and somebody in a good neutral spine stance. You start thinking of a super G turn. And the people who are doing it effectively, or even a downhill turn, are perfectly stacked up with a nice neutral spine all the way through. So what should you do and when you should do it? This kind of goes back to the question we have. Core activation and strength, those primary stabilizing exercises. Okay? You should be doing those, and I would say every day. Okay? So the question of going back to it at any moment, you never stop it. You are always doing those activities. And that doesn't mean an hour a day. It can be a wake up in the morning and lie on the floor, a nice solid ground, and doing some dead bugs just to kind of get, hey, my mind next to that core, stand up, make sure I'm in neutral spine, here I am. You can do neutral spine all day long. Okay? Great. I do remember actually, before I even went to grad school, I do remember actually standing in line up at Buttermilk and kind of doing some of this and doing this, making sure I could balance and stand on one foot before taking my lessons out. So it was, my back hurts, I was young back then, but even then. Balance training, I'm still young, to some people, yes, I will say that. I'm feeling older and older every day.
It gets worse.
I was just hanging out with a guy yesterday who is not even 30 yet, and he was asking, and he was kind of lamenting. I was like, we were testing another athlete who was in their mid 50s, and I made a comment. I'm like, yeah, when you hit 30, and you wake up the next day, and all of a sudden all the power is gone. And then I remember when it happened at 30, and I remember it happened when I hit 35. I turned 40 this summer. I think the day after I turned 40, I'm gonna feel it there. I'm sure everybody's telling me it gets worse. Maybe even smaller increments, not 5-year increments, like 1-year increments. Yeah, I'm sure it does.
One run.
Halfway down the run?
What do you have surprises?
All right, so other than core, strength, activation, balance training. Okay, this is, I kind of hinted at the beginning. You guys work on your balance every day you go to work, every time you go on the hill. You are working on it. Okay? Imagine your high school classmates that when you go back to your high school reunion, or you've heard about your high school classmate who was fallen and broken a hip, and worried about their balance and things like that. Balance training is something that you should focus on every single day that you possibly can. I will tell you from a research side also, as people get older, strength is also going to be a key to balance. So if you're not doing some kind of strength training, this is all, then I would call this is all strength training, especially the weighted carries. Those are going to help with your balance as well. So make sure you're doing everything. And what just happened? Out of balance. Please wait. Okay. And if you don't use it, you lose it. And the best way to learn how to get in balance is to force yourself out of balance. So I have a bunch of stupid human tricks, I call them, on cross-country skis that are not look like anything like normal cross-country skiing. It's just getting people to work on balance. Because as a cross-country ski instructor, the most thing that we run into is, can you stand on one ski and balance while it's sliding? I mean, that's where we need to be, and there's so many people who can't do that, and so we're trying every way possible we can to get on that agility to balance on one ski. So again, I'm going to tell you right now, come cross-country ski with us, we'll work on your balance. I'll help your alpine skiing in a heartbeat. I said strength training before. I jumped ahead when I was trying to get my screen back up. Everybody should be strength training. Some kind of strength training. That could be body weight. That could be standing up and doing squats. That's strength training. You do not have to put a load on your back. Okay? It can be with resistance bands. If you find a personal trainer, find a PT that will give you some kind of strength routine. A compound lift. The reason why I put compound lift on there, compound lift is a multi-joint movement. The squat is a compound lift. The deadlift is a compound movement. Because think of all those movements, my focus has been on stability in the core. If I don't have that, in a compound lift, it's going to be a problem. So, from EMG or surface EMG studies, the squat activates the core more than any other exercise, more than a plank, more than a crunch, more than anything else. A near max squat. So if you can squat with good neutral spine, you are always working on your core. I also think of runners. You think of runners, every single time they land, they have to control that neutral spine, they have to fire their core. They have ripped abs, not because they do a bunch of sit-ups. They have ripped abs. When you watch the Boston Marathon on Monday, it was because every single time they run, they're doing basically a core stabilization. Okay? So, walking, hiking in the summer. Hiking, that's the one that I think is the most interesting. And there's a lot of people when they hike in the summer, they start doing weird things with their hips. So if you're a hiker in the summer as your activity, come back to this and be like, where is my neutral spine? Can I activate that core? Can I get a core workout from just going for a nature hike in the mountains? If you're a bike rider, your power will go through the roof you activate that core, make sure you have neutral spine. Okay? So I've been away for the last 2 days working with pro cyclists, dead bug. And every one of those athletes get off the bike and do dead bug because they had weak cores. There's 18 to 20-year-old pro cyclists, and those boys had horrible cores. So strength training, compound lift. And then finally, if you can get to agility training, I know some people might be really scary about it. In their cross-country skiing, what we do a lot of, it's kind of been a hot topic for us as a national team, what we've been bringing to a lot of people, is a lot of agility training on our skis, but we do it a lot of times on the ground as well with our ski boots on the snow. A lot of the things that we do as a ski instructors in alpine and snowboard with beginners is agility training, just to kind of get them aware of their balance and their movement patterns. I would repeat that. If you're somebody who teaches a lot of upper level classes and not a lot of lower level lessons, I would try to teach a lower level lesson every once in a while just to work on your own agility as an instructor. I always used to love doing that as an instructor. Like, hey, this is actually my opportunity to work on myself, not just help my student. So agility training, it can look in a lot of different levels. It doesn't have to be plyometrics. I could put plyometrics there, but that would not fit to a lot of the population here. Anytime you have to move and or accelerate, keeping that core activated. And I love watching and I love getting older. The older the athlete doing sprints, the better. I'm a coach that doesn't like to hear, I'm old, I don't sprint anymore. It doesn't have to look that. I'm not a sprinter. I try to sprint, it looks funny. I go really slow. But as long as I'm thinking I'm doing it, I'm trying it, that's the intention is there. So this is what you guys can do. Really simple, and I would find coaches that are going to help you do it. And that question of when should I do it, I would say you have to do something every single day. So again, that question of do I go back to the primary, do I go back to the dead bug? Every single day you're doing something like that. Would you be strength training every day? No. Strength training, definitely not every day. Would you be hiking every day in the summer? Most likely. Are you skiing every day? Not every day. If you're doing something. So the days you're not working, you're not hiking, you're not riding your bike, you're doing something that are going to activate and start priming the core and getting those stability muscles going.
How did you describe agility training again?
Agility training is anytime you have to decelerate and accelerate, which also, if you really think back to your physics when you were in high school or college, a change of direction is also an acceleration and deceleration. So I always kind of add that on there. But any acceleration, deceleration, change in direction with keeping the core neutral. Okay. That's the hardest thing. If you think back, if you have kids that did soccer, or you did soccer and they did all these cutting movements, how often was that coach out there telling them to keep their core tight and their strength? That's where the coaches were losing it. So, like I said, you guys, I've summarized 2 different long talks. I probably talked actually longer than I wanted to today. And there's tons of questions. I'm kind of throwing a little seed out there of getting people to think. I wish I could work with every single one of you guys all summer. But I know that's not possible because I don't live where all you guys live. But you guys can always contact me, and I would definitely encourage you to find somebody in your own community and that is, 1, knows about skiing, and 2, is legitimate. Like FMS was 1, but I would also always interview them, kind of like a client would interview you. Of like, am I a good fit? Do they know what they're talking about? Do they have some kind of screening? Are they going to give you some kind of prescription for change? So. Questions right now?
Max squat, did you just do one?
A max squat?
Yeah, what we would say would be a good indicator.
So a good squat pattern is going to be coming from a hip hinge, so neutral spine, and you want to hip hinge back and down, keeping the knees behind the toes. Okay? So a lot of people, and I would say you go to limit right now. Ideally, and I do not have the flexibility right now, but ideally you want to get as low as possible. Okay, there's a lot of people that start saying below 90 degrees, meaning my hips below my knees, is bad. If you have good mechanics, that is not bad. So technically, If I get to 90, that is called a half squat. A lot of us do quarter squats. A full squat, excuse my language, is ass to grass. Okay?
Okay, that's what we're afraid of.
Yep.
But you have to be able to go back up.
I
So,
know.
you have to go, yeah, go. So I will. This is one homework that I give a lot of people, and scale this to your own limitations of your joints and your body. But know that this is so. Kelly Starrett is another PT, kind of in the CrossFit world too. Talks a lot about this stuff. I'm taking it from him. His quote, and I don't know this for sure. I'm referencing where I got it from. That in populations that defecate on the ground and cook on the ground, so they have to do this, do not have hip and lower back problems. Okay? So his claim is, can you get to 10 minutes a day in this position?
Just hold it.
Just holding it. Okay? And you should be able to. Okay? So toes pointed forward, my back, I don't know if it is right now, I haven't done this in a while, my back should be neutral. Should be able to sit like this for 10 minutes a day.
With your toes forward.
Toes forward, not toes out. So not pig toe, not this. Okay, this toes out like that. That's showing some weak adductors. Okay?
Right.
So that's also, if you are, one other thing, goes along with all this, but it's a little bit more of this, it is a stability thing. So if you are somebody who naturally stands duck-footed, okay, you want to bring your feet neutral. Okay? And every time I hear somebody talk about that as one of those indicators of weak glute medius and weak adductors, they don't have any specific exercises other than to be conscious of it. If you're standing around at a party, you're standing around, and all of a sudden you're kind of bored with the conversation, but you want to look like you're engaged still, double check with yourself. What are my feet doing? Oh, yeah. Makes you look really engaged. And you just corrected your feet. And then a couple minutes later, you're going to go back to that.
What if you had your back against the wall when you were doing that?
When you're doing this, it would be a good way to start it.
The chair.
Yeah. So, going back here so you can do that. United States. And eventually you're going to get out to this. Okay. Wall sits, isometric hold like this.
Right.
Okay. You strengthen the muscles at the length they're at. And are you ever really holding this? Okay. A lot of times in alpine skiing, we're isometric hold on a big, super downhill turn. I would say you're actually not holding it. I'm not a big isometric strength training fan. I would do a dynamic movement. So we got lots of questions. I'm going to start that
Look
way.
at those knees really bent like that. It cuts off circulation. It
It-
just does.
It does. Yeah, so right now my limitation on this, I will tell you, whoop, I'm going to fall back, is a circulation issue.
But isn't
There's
that,
nothing to do about that, right?
no, but isn't that because you're actually collapsing? So like, if you're actually like folding, not like just falling,
Yeah,
you know, but actually like.
holding it in
If
there.
you're watching little kids, like they do this all the time, you know? You shouldn't, if you're actually like, it's not like you're, the back of your hamstrings are just like massive against your calves. You're not just sitting there, you're actually like, you're kind of squatting.
You're kind of holding it.
You're
And
basically
so,
doing a squat.
and I think, I hear what you're saying, because I definitely feel it. I think it comes into a conditioning point where, like what Devin was saying, is if we're just falling into it and not activating our muscles to be in that stance, we are allowing basically the venous return to be collapsed off. But also, if you think about it, think back to the youngest kid that you know, if it's your own kid or grandkid, they sit in this position all the time for a long period of time. Like my nephews that I have right now that are young, they're like this, no problem. And if it was an anatomical thing that we all cut off our circulation, then even a young kid would have that problem. So I would say it's part of our modern society that we have lost some conditioning and lost some flexibility that can come back if we haven't used it. So, but I would say that's one thing I kind of stand up and let it wiggle out and then I go back down. Yeah,
When you were doing the max squat, heels are flat on the ground.
heels are flat on the ground. So in the squat, on the functional movement screen, to get a 3, you do it with your heels on the ground. If you can't do it with your heels on the ground, they put the whole functional movement screen as a system, and it has a board that's about 1.5 inches wide. You put your heels on that, and then you do it. So if you start lazing your heels up, you start making it a little easier because your ankle flexibility doesn't have to be as much. So the deep squat is also a measure of your ankle flexibility, so you might have to raise your heel up. So again, that's a progression of, can I do it? Do I do it on a board? If you're at a gym, put a plate down, put your heels on the plate, do that. If you're actually squatting even with weight, lifting those heels up. If you look at Olympic lifting shoes, they have big wedges. They're kind of cheating already. The CrossFit Peter Bull, like the zero drop shoes. But if you actually raise up, you get a little bit more stability.
And do you work separately on ankle flexibility, or is some of that purely anatomical?
Yeah, no, you can. Some of it's going to be a limitation of our actual anatomic ability. But if you score like a 1 on a deep squat on the FMS, a lot of the exercises are just going to be simply getting into a lunge and just progressively pushing your ankle forward and trying to work on just that posterior, your Achilles flexibility, and just making sure you can roll into that and get it nice and deep.
Would that be initial movement?
Yep. If it's a mobility, flexibility thing, this might be simple as just sitting here and can I push forward? Can I not? How far can I go? Can I slowly work it into more and more forward? Okay. In cross-country skiing, we talk a lot about ankle. Our ankle bending flexing is a huge importance to us, and we do not have hard plastic boots to keep us, again, to feel the front of our boot. But there too, one that I remember, good national level skier in the U.S. for cross country, he'd always just toe to the wall, and I put my knee to the wall, okay, and I start moving it back an inch, then move it forward to the wall. Nice way to progressively measure how far I'm going. Right now here I can't do it, my heel comes up. But we're all going to have a limitation. And Tom, for your division. Yes?
So you said your area of expertise was more physiological.
Mm-hmm.
So what physiological things do you feel have been researched that would be advantageous, other than just like hydration? Like, are there supplements that you should be taking?
Yeah.
Is there anything that's really substantiated?
Yeah, so those are questions on nutrition, which we can get into too, but one really interesting thing that came out of actually some research in Austria about a year ago, and this actually, so everybody, who's more of an endurance athlete? Cross-country skiers or alpine skiers? Cross-country, okay. I have that bias too. This research out of Austria though, said high-intensity, short-radius turns, alpine skiing, was more aerobically challenging than cross-country skiing. So,
45-degree pitch.
no, it's 1 minute on, 1 minute off. 1 minute on, 1 minute off, times 10. So if you start thinking about as a run, and that was compared to a 10K cross-country ski. And so it was one of those things where I was like, ooh. I keep saying I have a blurb that I have summary of it that I keep saying I'm going to put up on the national website, but now that I just went out there, I might have to actually do it. So you guys can actually look at it. Dave is going to hold me to that one now. So, but yeah, it's one of those amazing ones that it is very specific on it, but it was, when you read it, yes, it was very high intense short radius turns. So if you start thinking about a slalom skier, and if you follow World Cup skiing, think of the body types of Hirscher versus Axel Smithville. Which one looks more like an endurance athlete? Which one looks more like a power athlete? So you might start thinking of those East Coast, Midwestern slalom skiers look very different than the Western downhillers. Tech and slalom, tech and downhill look very different conditioning-wise. So, and they look very similar to cross-country skiing. One more question, and then I'll take them outside afterwards.
Well, it's just a statement I was gonna say. I think something that's really important for this group in here is what you just said about the high intensity that we do. That's for one run, but we do it over a course of all day, or we're in lessons all day. So we need that endurance to be able to last the entire day. And when people don't have that, that's when they're so tired at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So they need both.
Yeah. And then even when I was teaching in Aspen and you would have the guests that come up from Miami who aren't in shape and now they're at 8,000, 10,000 feet, same thing, and now you're like, wow, I can do this all the time. And that's, you know, the guest service of taking care of your, just think of that it's like they're running a 5 to a 10K that day. So remember that. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for coming in.